It's Monday, the 6th of December. Nowhere to hide, the government reveals its 10-year plan to tackle drug kingpins. And could middle-class users also face losing their passports? That as the Commons Speaker tells Sky News he plans to call in police after claims of drug abuse in the Houses of Parliament. A warning from a COVID vaccine creator. The next virus we encounter could be more lethal as recorded cases of Omicron continue to rise.
In breaking news, ousted leader Aung San Suu Kyi is sentenced to 4 years by a court in Myanmar.
Thousands of residents are still without power as the UK prepares for a second major storm to hit. We are live for you in Northumberland this morning. Volcano eruption, the town's blanketed with ash in Indonesia as rescuers battle poor weather in the search for survivors. The British teenager who survived a crocodile attack in Zambia speaks out about her ordeal.
I fully accepted the fact that I was going to lose my foot, and I accepted that, and I said to all my friends, it's fine, I've lost my foot, I'm still alive.
Good morning, everybody. Nowhere to hide is the government's message as they reveal a 10-year plan to tackle drug crime in England and Wales. Gangs, drug kingpins and even middle-class users will be in their sights. Reports this morning harsher punishments could be dished out to deter drug users, such as removing their passports and also their driving licences. The Policing Minister, Kit Malthouse, is with us shortly. First, here's some of the key announcements for you. The government will invest £300 million in closing down gangs involved in the drugs trade, and the police will be tasked with carrying out more than 6,000 disruptions against their activities. The strategy also outlines plans to dismantle 2,000 more county lines distribution routes, having already closed around 1,500 in the last 2 years. The strategy will also include the largest ever funding increase for tackling addiction and repeat offences, after the Home Office said there are as many as 300,000 heroin and crack cocaine addicts in the country who are responsible for almost half of all acquisitive crimes, such as burglaries and thefts. Joined now by the Policing Minister, Kit Malthouse. Mr Malthouse, good to have you with us this morning. Thank you for joining us. It's a 10-year plan, I believe, to combat drug-related crime. Could it really involve taking people's passports away from them?
Well, in time, yes. I mean, one of the things we're focusing on to begin with, as you quite rightly said, Kay, is the disproportionate amount of crime driven by heroin and crack addicts. But we also need to reflect on the fact that there are an awful lot of kind of lifestyle users of cocaine and other drugs out there who are driving much of the violence and the degradation that we see from drugs overall. And so what we're going to do is publish a white paper next year looking at what we can do to try and turn them away from their particular habits. And that might involve, we hope, interfering in their lives in a way that brings about behavioural change. We've seen that in other parts of government policy. If you look at the Child Support Agency, where people, I was responsible for that for a while, where people don't pay their support, courts do have a power to remove their passport and their driving licence. These are the kind of impositions on a kind of lifestyle which we hope will bring about behaviour change over the next decade.
If it's true that 11 out of 12 locations tested in the House of Commons tested positive for Class A drugs, it could be that some of your colleagues find themselves in that position.
Well, I hope not. There are obviously several thousand people who work on the estate, and I'd be surprised if there weren't some lifestyle users of drugs amongst them, I have to say. But what we want to try and do is get to a situation where the police and other authorities are concentrating as much on that part of the drugs industry, as you like, if you like, as they are on crack and heroin. We need to make sure that we drive crime numbers down overall. The drugs industry brings a lot of violence and degradation and victimisation into this country, and so attacking the supply, which, as you say, we've been doing with real vigour over the last 2 years, and accelerating that over the next decade is critical. But we also have to look at demand at the sharp end, at heroin and crack users who need to be treated for their addiction as well as punished for their crimes, but also then moving on to the much bigger group of those who are driving this trade of powder coming from across the world to the UK, who are driving that trade. We need to turn them away from it as well and deal with their offending and their behaviour.
You talk about lifestyle use. It makes it sound almost acceptable in the House of Commons.
Well, it's not acceptable. I mean, I've been struggling for a word. People say recreational, they call it middle class, lifestyle, whatever it is. It's use that is driving a lot of violence and a lot of misery. And there are lots of young people, as you will know, in the capital and elsewhere, who are dying as part of that trade, being stabbed and killed. You know, just in the last 2 years, we've rescued about 4,000 young people who've been dragged into the drugs trade as part of county lines. And so the idea that that kind of casual usage on a Saturday night is somehow a victimless crime is ridiculous and immoral. And we think that those people need to focus on their behaviour, and we need to find a way in society that we make it unacceptable. We impose on their lifestyle in the same way that over the last 20 or 30 years we've made drink driving unacceptable socially. We'd like to do the same with drugs.
Labour says it's your fault because you've cut £100 million from drug treatment services since you came to power.
Well, obviously, Labour do a lot of shouting and arguing about the past, but in truth, the drugs industry has changed significantly over the last 10 years. We saw declines in usage, to a certain extent a decline in drug-related crime, and then that industry sort of reacted, right? It did what most industry would do. It found a better product, made it cheaper, new ways to distribute it, opened new markets. It's a very interesting economic and business dynamic, if you like, that meant that we needed to address it. Now, whatever, 3 years ago, we commissioned Dame Carol Black to have a look at drugs. We're so alarmed about it. This strategy today is a response to that, but it builds on the work we've been doing for the last 2 years, closing down these hundreds of county lines across the country, building these recovery projects in places like Blackpool and Norwich and Middlesbrough, where we've brought everybody together to turn lives around, particularly those on heroin. Now we can turbocharge that effort going forward. You know, the critical change for us, Kay, is that we recognise that this is a business, right? What these drug dealers are doing is trying to make money. And if we can interfere in their business, both in terms of reducing demand, but breaking the supply chains, then hopefully we'll drive activity down once and for all.
OK, let's talk about Omicron. Should read that Greek letter that none of us thought we would ever know much more about. More than 50% rise in a day of Omicron cases, but the impact on deaths and hospitalisations has been minimal. In other words, there haven't been any at this stage. Are we massively overreacting?
Well, I don't think we are. We're being proportionate and precautionary. I mean, obviously, we don't know completely what this variant is going to do. We know it seems to be quite infectious, but we don't know yet exactly how difficult it's going to be for people's bodies to cope with. That research is ongoing. We've got world-beating science, you know, world-leading scientists who are able to give us those answers over the next 2 or 3 weeks. In the meantime, what the Prime Minister said is, look, let's be careful. Right, let's take it steady. Let's wear masks in certain areas where we think there's likely to be transmission. Let's think about travel more carefully and make sure we do testing at the border to restrict the virus coming in, to buy us a bit more time. But fundamentally, let's be proportionate about it and get on with our lives to a certain extent and try and have as merry a Christmas as we possibly can. And so we're learning as we go. Don't forget, Omicron is quite a way down the alphabet. That means between Delta and now, we've been through a number of variants that haven't got very far. Let's see where this one goes. But for the moment, steady.
OK, get you with your Greek studying at school. The US, though, has an awful lot of scientists as well, world class too, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, who's top of the tree. And he's told the leader there that actually the travel ban should be lifted. Should we do the same?
Well, let's see. As I say, Kay, we've got these amazing scientists at Porton Down, just on the edge of my constituency, who are doing that research right now, subjecting this virus to various tests to see how it responds, see what we know we can learn about it. And, you know, we know that the work we do here in the UK has been leading the world and informing much of what the world does around this virus. So I have great confidence that they'll give us a much clearer picture of the next 2 weeks. And until then, it feels to me, doesn't it to you, that we should be cautious?
I think all I'm doing is trying to clarify whether if the US is lifting the travel ban, we are saying, OK, good for you, but we're not going to do ours this side of Christmas.
Well, I think, look, we'll be informed by what comes out around the world. What the Prime Minister said, the restrictions will be reviewed in 3 weeks. We need a bit of time to form our own view about what this virus is capable of. Then we'll be able to look at the picture. But as I say, review well, it'll now be in 2 weeks, won't it, of the measures that have been put in place. But it seems to me pretty sensible and proportionate, off the back of the fact that we're in a much better place than a lot of countries, right? The decisions we made in the summer are paying dividends now. The booster programme is going really well. 20 million people now, I think, and rising. I've got my booster a week today. Hope you've had yours, Kay. You know, people are really building their enthusiasm now for that programme. And if we carry on as we are, then hopefully all will be well.
Thank you for sharing with my audience, Minister, that I'm a lot older than you. Pre-travel COVID tests.
No, mine is delayed. Mine's delayed because I had COVID.
Well
in
saved,
March,
Minister.
So I had to
well
delay
saved.
mine. You weren't like,
yeah.
It's true.
Okay. Yeah, and I had mine early. I didn't. Pre-travel COVID tests, day 2 pre-departure tests. Why did we ever get rid of those? You know, if we're only going to put those in as a knee-jerk when we get one of these variants in, it's already too late. You know, we need to shut the door before the horse has bolted.
Well, no, we have to be agile, right? We have to recognise that all these things are impositions on people's lives and lifestyles. They're obviously extra cost, and they cause difficulty for the travel industry. Now, we need to try and smooth that as much as possible and be proportionate about our response. You know, we've got family overseas. We're going to be travelling at Christmas. We're having to have tests in and out, both ways. And it is a total pain, especially if you've got kids, right? So we understand that. And so we have to be proportionate and make these judgments at the right moment. That's what we've done. And it feels to me as if in the face of the unknown on this virus at the moment, for the next few weeks, that's where we need to broadly be.
But surely they're only ever effective if they're left in place until we see the back of this pandemic. Otherwise, we're saying, oh, it's already in, we need to put these day 2 tests, pre-departure tests in again. It's too late by then.
Well, I don't think it necessarily is. I mean, obviously, there's lots of testing going on, right? We're in a great place on testing. People have got used to it. They understand it. But there are lots of requirements around the world, and there's movements of virus around the world that we need to pay attention to. So being agile, it strikes me, is the best thing, Kate. We want to try and live as normal a life as we possibly can as the various, evolutions of this virus work their way through the system. And that means that we're going to have to, duck and drake a bit, I'm afraid. Now, Prime Minister is doing his best to help us live as normal a life as possible, recognising that we don't know everything we need to know yet about different variations, and that we might need to do certain things like this as time goes on. So I think the British people generally accept that notion.
OK, here comes the Christmas party question. The police commissioner, the London Police Commissioner, Cressida Dick, says reports of this party, or one of the parties at number 10 on the 18th of December, have not been reported to her. Should they be?
Well, I thought somebody had reported. I read in the paper that some Labour MPs had reported this supposed event. I mean, as I say, Kay, I know nothing about it. I've been assured by number 10 that no rules were broken. If there was a gathering of any kind, for your information, at the time I was kicking indoors in Basildon with Essex Police on a drugs gang, which is what I'm here to talk about. But yeah, I mean, the police will have a look. It's for them to form a judgment.
She said that it's not been reported to her. If it has been reported to the police, should they investigate?
Well, that's a matter for the police. I mean, the police get reports all day, every day of things that have happened, and they make a judgment about that. And it would be wrong for me, as the policing minister, to seek to have a view about a particular police investigation. We don't generally comment on those things. But right, we are assured that, or I've been assured that everything was done
yesterday, and didn't he?
At the time,
the Justice Secretary did yesterday, and also Deputy Prime Minister. He said if any rules were broken, then if there was a breach of the rules, then it should be investigated. And if it happened, indeed, is what he said. But if it did happen, it would be a breach of Tier 3 rules. Surely, if a crime potentially had been committed, it should at least be looked into by the police.
Well, you're asking me to answer a hypothetical question about this issue. But my general view is that where crime is reported, the police should investigate.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really answering the question, is it? And I know that the government is also keen to have free speech over privacy. That's what we're being told about at the moment. Mm-hmm. So given that there should be free speech over privacy, shouldn't the public know whether or not there was a party at number 10?
Well, as I say, the questions have been asked. Number 10 have said that everything was complied with. If reports have been made to the police, then they'll no doubt have a look and form a view about whether an offence was committed or not. As policing minister, my view is that if offences are committed of any kind and reported to the police, there should be an investigation by the police. They have to examine it and decide whether they are going to pursue it. And that's a decision for them and not something that I, as a politician, should seek to influence. Whether it's through your kind
I
invitations
understand,
or
Minister,
otherwise.
but it's just really irritating, isn't it, for the public? I mean, if there was a gathering of any sort that involved people getting together, having a drink after work, then that would have been a breach of Tier 3 rules on the 18th of December last year, and as a result, it would have been against the law. So surely the public should know whether that happened or not.
Well, I assume that any inquiry that is made by the police will examine those issues. As I say, number 10 are reassuring everybody that all rules were complied with during that period, and I take that reassurance at face value. But no doubt if the police are alerted, they will have a look and they'll form a view, and we'll all learn more about it in the days to come.
Which brings me back to my question, which is, should the police be investigating an alleged breach of Tier 3 rules?
Well, the police should be investigating anything that is a historic crime that is reported to them. It's hard for me to go any further than that, Kate, because we don't generally comment on specific cases or inquiries as ministers. That's not what proper for us to do. But in terms of what the police's responsibility is, I think they're very aware of that. If reports are made, then inquiries should follow, and let's see where it goes after that.
OK, fast forward a year. What can and we can't do this Christmas season?
Well, obviously, the Prime Minister said you can go about your normal business, but there are some specific restrictions around mask wearing. So you have to wear a mask in a retail environment and on public transport. Obviously, some restrictions which we've discussed on travel in terms of testing to make sure that we're not importing the virus. But otherwise, what he said is that we should go about our business. I will be taking my team for a Christmas dinner next week out at a restaurant in the West End to support that industry and also have some fun at the same time. I hope you will be too. We will be masked up where appropriate, and I'll be taking a lateral flow test to make sure that I'm negative before I participate. As I did this morning, Kate, before I came to see you, conscious as I am of your safety too.
Thank you very much. I did exactly the same before I came in this morning, Minister. How many people will be in your party next week?
I think there'll be 6 of us.
OK. And what are you doing on Christmas Day? Will you be in a family gathering as well? We were speaking to Sajid Javid, and he was talking about if he was in a group of maybe 200 or 300, he would take extra measures. I'm not sure how many of my viewers ever go to a party of 200 or 300.
Well, if you're interested, I will be overseas for Christmas, I hope, having been tested appropriately on either side. The other half of my family are Canadian. So we'll be there and we'll be observing the regulations in that country.
OK. Well, good luck with your booster jab. It doesn't hurt a bit. And if you can have your flu vaccine at the same time, go for it.
Well, I will try and do both. I have to say the first one I felt slightly dizzy, but then it's been fine. So fingers crossed it'll go well.
Was it AstraZeneca, though, or what did you have?
Yeah, I had AZ twice,
Yeah.
so that means I think this time I'll get something different, either
Pfizer.
Moderna or Pfizer. So we'll see how it goes. But I have to say, I was one of the lucky ones. When I had COVID, I didn't have any symptoms. I did my 10 days, constantly testing myself temperature-wise, but nothing happened. So fingers crossed it stays the same. I feel for people and I've got lots of friends who've been hammered hard by the virus. It's been really tough for a lot of people. But the booster is the way forward, and I'm so pleased that you've had yours, Kay.
And you too. Keep well, Minister. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Cheers.
And just a reminder, if you are heading out this morning, then you can take us with you. Find us on the mobile app or go to our website and to our live blog to watch the programme there. You can catch up on our interviews on Twitter as well, at Burley Erin. And Umar are cutting those for you right now, and they'll be on our Twitter feed in just a moment. Meantime, cases of the new COVID variant Omicron continue to rise. There's new data emerging on the picture in South Africa as well this morning. Katie Barnfield with us in the newsroom. Hi, Katie. Good morning. What are the figures saying?
Good morning, Kay. Well, indeed, there is an anxious wait for, among scientists here for more data on how severe this new variant is. And there is, a lot of focus on South Africa as the country where this new variant was first picked up. We are waiting for data on how severe it is at the moment. Well, one thing we do know about this new variant is that it appears to be highly transmissible. I think we have a chart, actually, that we are able to show you. So if we look at the figures here, on November the 27th, just last week, there were only 2 known Omicron cases in the UK, but the numbers have risen sharply since then. Total cases in the UK have increased by more than 50% from Saturday to Sunday. That means a jump from 160 to 246 in just one day. And as I say, all eyes on South Africa at the moment for more data on this variant. And we have actually heard from Cyril Ramaphosa, the president of South Africa, this morning. He said the emergence of this new variant is of great concern to him, and he says that it now appears to be dominating new infections in most provinces in the country. And while early indications from that country are that infections seem to be fairly mild, we heard some data from hospitals from a small number of patients that have been hospitalised in South Africa, that most patients who are hospitalised there did not need supplemental oxygen. So while it does appear to be mild, he says they are preparing hospitals, and they're also going to convene a new coronavirus council, which will take whichever measures are necessary to address this variant.
OK, thanks very much indeed for the update. Thanks a lot. Well, let's have a quick look at the numbers for you. 27th of November, just last week, there were only 2 known Omicron cases in the UK, but the numbers have risen sharply since then. Total cases in the UK increased by more than 50% from Saturday to Sunday, jumping from 160, still not big numbers, are they, to 246. In the most recent 24-hour period, there have been 43,992 new record cases of COVID-19. Another 54 deaths, sadly, have been reported within 28 days of a positive test. That brings the total number of deaths in the UK to 145,605. Almost 500,000 booster and third jabs were given in the latest 24-hour period, taking the total number of those doses to more than 20 million. And some breaking news you're waking up to this morning. Myanmar's former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, has been given a 4-year prison term for incitement. So let's bring in our Southeast Asia correspondent, Siobhan Robbins, joining us now, as you can see. Hello to you, Siobhan. It had been deferred until this week. What more do we know?
Yes, as you say, this morning it's been confirmed that Aung San Suu Kyi has been given a 4-year sentence. The ousted president has also been given a 4-year sentence, and the mayor of Naypyidaw a 2-year sentence. Now, Aung San Suu Kyi's charges that she's been convicted on are basically for breaking COVID-19 protocol and for incitement. The COVID-19 protocol is in reference to actions over a year ago, actually, where she waved past an election rally after winning the election in 2020, and the incitement is actually to do with statements that were put out after her arrest. So that charge was vigorously fought by her lawyers, but to no avail. She has been given this 4-year sentence. Now, to remind people, Aung San Suu Kyi was the democratically elected leader of Myanmar. Her party resoundingly won the election in 2020, but this year in February, the military staged a coup and detained her and various other politicians. Since then, we've seen widespread violence in Myanmar, security forces killing more than 1,000 people since February. More than 10,000 people have been arrested, including Aung San Suu Kyi. And this isn't over. As you can probably guess, the reaction from human rights groups to today's sentences have been damning. Amnesty has said this is basically bogus charges, the junta trying to crush the opposition. One of the international crisis group's spokespeople texted me to say this is not a legal process, it's a retribution against Aung San Suu Kyi. Basically, Min Aung, who's the junta leader, is flexing his muscles, and Dr. Sasso, who is a representative of the parallel government, told Sky News that he was extremely concerned, particularly given the fact that Aung San Suu Kyi is still facing further charges, which in total, if given maximum sentences, could see her spending more than 100 years in jail.
Oh, my goodness. OK, Siobhan, thank you. Thanks a lot. More than 3,000 homes in northern England and Scotland are still without power as the UK prepares for a second major storm to hit. The Energy Networks Association has said that 3,190 homes still waiting to be reconnected as of 2 o'clock yesterday, the majority in the northeast of England. Scottish and Southern Electricity Networks said power had been restored to all 135,000 of its affected customers by Sunday evening. The Met Office is predicting gale-force winds of 45 to 50 miles an hour over the next 2 days and is warning the newest winds will cause further damage to communities affected by Storm Arwen. Rescuers in Indonesia are continuing to search for survivors after a volcanic eruption on the main island of Java, after villages were blanketed with ash. Look at this. Officials warned residents to remain vigilant as heavy wind and rain brought search and rescue efforts to a temporary halt in some affected areas. 14 people were killed and nearly 100 people have been injured so far when the Semeru volcano erupted over the weekend. Our Asia correspondent Tom Cheshire is standing by for us. Hi, Tom. 14 dead so far, more than 100 injured. Quite a lot of devastation.
Morning, Kay. Yeah, this has been a lot of devastation. Actually, a lot of it to do with the winds and rain. The lava dome on top of this volcano, the highest on the island, collapsed, and that led to this huge explosion, ash flying 40,000 feet. And yeah, these terrifying pictures of the clouds coming towards villages. And as you say, sadly, 14 people at least have been confirmed dead, nearly 100 injured, and those injured have burns, which show just how quick this was travelling, just how unexpected it was when it happened on Saturday. Now, they have been trying to do the search and rescue, but that has been hampered by, first of all, just the nature of the ash. This is piling on top of cars. People have been digging with hands. There's a bridge that was destroyed by lava flows, which has made things harder. And then today, the rain and the wind coming back, having fears that search and rescue workers could be in danger from ash sliding down the mountain. So it is a very delicate balance, especially as you mentioned, with the idea that this might not be over yet. The observatory that looks at this volcano is saying there is still a potential threat. People had been trying to come back to see what was left of their homes, if anything, to search for people who are missing, but they've been told to stay away because there is the threat for another eruption. It's a very tricky task right now for search and rescue workers in the area, currently pausing that search and rescue operation, but hoping to resume it as soon as they can.
OK, thank you. Let's talk about the volcano on the Spanish island of La Palma. It's continuing to spew lava and gases into the 11th week of activity. The red-hot lava from Cumbre Viejo volcano has been engulfing houses and flowing towards the Atlantic Ocean. Even in daylight pictures, it looks incredibly dramatic, doesn't it? Authorities said yesterday that new vents have opened up again on the cone with several very fluid flows. Now, a British teenager who was seriously injured in a crocodile attack in Zambia is set to fly back to rejoin her family in the UK in the next 24 hours. Amelia Osborne-Smith was bitten and dragged underwater while whitewater rafting near the Victoria Falls. Goodness me, I've done that myself. In a video released by the hospital, the 18-year-old said she fully expected to lose her leg after the attack.
When the accident happened, I fully accepted the fact that I was going to lose my foot. Okay. And I accepted that, and I said to all my friends, it's fine, I've lost my foot, I'm still alive. And then I was told that my foot's going to be fine and that I will be able to walk again. It's such a relief.
In other news this morning, the annual Fur Babies dog pageant took place in Leeds yesterday, and it was every bit as spectacular as you might expect. Before we show you one of the big winners, let's have a look at some of the other honourable mentions. This is Ted the pug, who's gone for the gingerbread man outfit of the year, and doesn't he wear it well? Here's Missy the Maltese, who took to the catwalk donning this spectacular blue number. I think that's supposed to be What's a Chops from Frozen, do you? Or a mermaid, as my director says, quite right. And here's Keegan, the West Highland Terrier, who went the extra mile this year. He dressed up as Hansel and even brought along his own gingerbread house. Got to watch the pug with that, haven't you? Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. But the dog making the most headlines is Mia, the Cocker Spaniel, who won first place in the Queen Belle category. And look at her outfit. You'd be barking mad to think that she doesn't deserve the title. She's got everything about her, hasn't she? The perfect pause. We'll be chatting to the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, in just a moment. But first, I just want to take you to Italy, or tell you about Italy. It's the latest country to get tough on its unvaccinated population after a handful of confirmed Omicron cases. As of today, a green pass, which is proof of vaccination recovery or a recent negative test, will be required for buses, the metro, local trains, and indeed hotels. Our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons is with us. So they're talking tough as well now.
Yeah, well, they've been talking tough for a while because you have needed this pass to actually go to work for a while now in Italy. Italy's got a high vaccination rate, well into the upper range of 80% for its adults. Clearly a country that was hit very, very badly by the first wave of the pandemic and is now seeing an economic recovery. And it's clear that the country's leaders see a link between economic recovery and high vaccination. So how do you push people to the remaining outliers to get vaccinated? Well, I think they've looked at the models of Austria and Germany and decided we just have to make life more uncomfortable for these people. So you will need this pass to go on public transport. But also, if you are not vaccinated or not recovered, then you will not be allowed in some places, some leisure places, restaurants, cinemas. They simply won't allow you into those places unless you've got a pass that says you're either vaccinated or you have recovered. Simply being unvaccinated but having a test certificate won't be enough. I think this is an important move that you are seeing in countries now, is effectively stigmatizing people who are not vaccinated. Now, we've seen Germany go a long way down that route. Similar rules that they have brought in as well, and heading towards mandatory vaccination. Austria is now releasing some of that details of mandatory vaccination and the huge fines that could entail. I think Europe is beginning to be very serious about cracking down on the unvaccinated minority that it sees as responsible for perpetuating this pandemic.
OK, Adam, thank you. The government has unveiled a £300 million action plan to crack down on drug crime in the UK, at the same time that the Commons Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has called on the Metropolitan Police to investigate drug use within Parliament. The Policing Minister, Kit Malthouse, told me that lifestyle users could be targeted with new measures such as removing their passports and driving licences. And he also said that reports of drug use in Parliament don't surprise him.
And that might involve, we hope, interfering in their lives in a way that brings about behavioural change. We've seen that in other parts of government policy. If you look at the Child Support Agency, where people, I was responsible for that for a while, where people don't pay their support, courts do have a power to remove their passport and their driving licence. These are the kind of impositions on a kind of lifestyle which we hope will bring about behaviour change over the next decade.
If it's true that 11 out of 12 locations tested in the House of Commons tested positive for Class A drugs, it could be that some of your colleagues find themselves in that position.
Well, I hope not. There are obviously several thousand people who work on the estate, and I'd be surprised if there weren't some lifestyle users of drugs amongst them, I have to say.
Joined by the Shadow Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, now newly appointed, of course. Congratulations, Ms Cooper. Thanks for joining us this morning. How surprised would you be that there were drug users in the House of Commons?
It's not something I've ever seen, but I think the Speaker of the House of Commons is absolutely right to say this has to be referred to the Metropolitan Police. You can't have an institution that's supposed to be law-making and in fact having within it so much law-breaking. So I think it's absolutely right that this is properly investigated.
And what do you think about the government's suggestion that people who are convicted of Class A drug crime should, in time, potentially lose their passports and their driving licences?
Well, we used to have all kinds of arrangements for drug treatment orders, for different kinds of responses through the courts. courts. And a lot of that has just fallen into disuse. So we've gone backwards really over the last 10 years. We've had, for example, a real loss of neighbourhood policing. So that means there aren't the police there to deal with that drug dealer on the corner or that's standing outside the local school. We've also had a 40% drop in drug treatment in some areas as well. So big drops in drug treatment. And it's that combination, I think, of the lack of action on policing, pulling that back, the lack of drug treatment, the cuts there, and then the lack of coordination through the courts for some of these measures is why we have gone badly backwards. So the thing we're looking for out of this strategy today is whether we'll see action on each of those areas, coordinated approach through the courts, but also the investment in the treatment that we need, get people back into treatment and in the criminal justice system. So you've actually got the police to take this action, because there's no point in talking about any of this if the police just aren't there to actually identify anyone that's got a problem.
We believe that in Scotland, if somebody is convicted of a Class A drug crime, that they should probably get a fine from the police rather than it be taken any further, taking the pressure off the prison system. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it's a bit unclear what the different sentencing proposals are that the government's coming forward with. That's something we're going to have to look at today. At the moment, there's a whole range of different things you can have. But we used to have a system where the courts, we had at one point specialist drug courts. We had a system where the courts could say, right, we're going to say testing or treatment is part of your sentence, is part of what the court will order. And that has just fallen massively into disuse. Some of those used to be used a lot if you go back 10 years. And hasn't been much more recently. So that's why some of this, it's unclear whether the government is actually just trying to reinvent a wheel that, frankly, they really should have had rolling 10 years ago. And we've had this lost decade almost. So I hope that they're going to be doing the right thing on some of these things, using the courts in the right way, but also using the police and public health in the right way. If you don't have that mix of things together, you don't solve the problem.
Omicron variant, are we overreacting? No hospitalisations, no deaths. It transpires that we've known about it in the UK since October.
Well, I really hope that the Omicron variant will turn out not to be a problem for our vaccine programme, not to be a problem in terms of the response to COVID that we've already got. But I think we have to take seriously the scientists when they say, look, this is a different new variant. We don't know enough about it. And it is because it is significantly different. We have to slow the spread before the vaccine, the boosters are fully rolled out and before we've done the research. So get the boosters rolled out, but slow the spread of the virus. That's of the variant. That's why I called for the testing, just proper testing before you get on an aeroplane from anywhere in the world, so that you've actually been tested before you're on a busy flight with a lot of other people. The government waited 2 weeks to bring those tests in. I think that was irresponsible, but I hope they're going to get on top of it now.
I did put that to the policing minister and I said, don't these tests need to stay in place until we've seen the back of this variant? Because otherwise you are literally closing the door every time the horse has bolted. And he said there has to be a balance between what we do and how people manage to go about their everyday lives.
Well, I think the thing about testing is that we are getting used to that now. Lots of people do lateral flow tests, the kids for school, people for different work, for different jobs, a lot of the time. So it just seems to me common sense that you have a lateral flow test before you get on an aeroplane that could have loads and loads of people. Otherwise, by the time you might discover that you've got Omicron, it could be a week later after all of the delayed testing once you get back, by which time all of those people you were on an aeroplane with, all of those people you were on a train or a tube or a bus with will then have also spread right across the country. So testing just seems to be a simple common sense thing to do. That's why I just can't understand why the government has been so resistant to it.
Gathering at number 10 Downing Street on the 18th of December last year, the police commissioner in London, Cressida Dick, says that she has not been told about it. You're the Shadow Home Secretary. Why have you not raised it with her?
Well, I understood this had been raised with her, and I think, to be honest, she really should have noticed it in the newspapers because there's been a lot of reporting on it. I think the government is been disgraceful in the way they're responding to this. They keep saying, oh, well, we don't recognise reports. Oh, well, the rules were followed. How can the rules have been followed if they had a party on December the 18th when they were telling everybody else to cancel their parties, when they were telling everybody else to cancel Christmas? And it is classic, one rule for them, another for everyone else. They cannot do this, especially in a public health pandemic. They have to sustain trust in the things that they ask everybody else to do and not just think they can rip up the rules for themselves. And that means they also have to be honest about what they've done rather than this shenanigans, trying to pretend, oh, nothing happened, but never quite saying it. And everybody knows there's something dodgy going on.
But back to my point, if the most important police officer in the country says she has not been told about it, and you are an incredibly important politician in the House of Commons, the leader when it comes to the Home Office and policing for your party, are you going to lift the phone up to her today and say, OK, I'm raising it with you now?
Well, we may need to follow up on this, but I just don't understand that response because, I understand that other MPs have raised it directly with her and also that it has been in the newspapers repeatedly. So I just simply don't understand this idea of them not being aware of it. Now, they've certainly obviously not been told about it by the government because the government seems to be just trying to hide the fact that this happened. I think it's just does come back to the core question, which is they have to just stick with the rules that they make for everyone else. They have to respect them and they have to respect everybody else across the country who they are asking to make sacrifices. And it's that failure to do so. It's not just about one party. It's about the impact it has on trust right across the country. And at the moment, actually, we cannot trust this Prime Minister. We cannot trust this government on anything like this.
But just let me press that point, if I may, because she was on the radio on Friday and she did say to my old mate, Nick Ferrari, I have not had any communication about this personally. It's going to take you 2 seconds to lift the phone to her. She's going to take your call, isn't she?
Well, I wanted to find out what's happened because my understanding is that this has actually been raised with her and she has been sent questions about this by other MPs, by other London MPs.
But you'll look into it.
So I will look into what has happened here.
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kay. Take care.
You too. Tamara's here. Thoughts, Tamara? Good morning.
Morning, Kay. Well, the government's big drug strategy being unveiled today and Labour, understandably, saying that it's the government who've cut back on drug treatment services over the last 10 years or so, and now they're just trying to recoup it. I would say that this is an interesting new direction, though. They're investing £900 million, I understand it, over 3 years. That's a huge amount of money, not just in tackling crime and arresting people, but also in treatment, so seeing it more as of a health problem and seeing if that new approach will make any inroads.
Very quickly on the Christmas party.
Yes, Kit Malthouse says the police should investigate if they are told a crime has been committed. And we know Labour MPs have contacted the Met Police since Cressida Dick said she'd had no reports and said you should investigate it. And he confirmed, perhaps for the benefit of his colleague Dominic Raab, that the police can investigate things that happened a year ago and should do if they believe the law has been broken. And you can see that Labour are going to keep pushing on that because they say it's wrong that now Downing Street have not said what exactly took place.
OK, thanks very much indeed. Thanks a lot. Well, let's talk about Christmas parties this year and weddings as well, of course. Steve Duggan, a celebrity party planner and founder of Stephen Duggan Events, is with us now. Hello to you, Stephen. Thanks for joining us. What are people planning this year?
It's a whole range of things. I think this year was intended to be the whole rush of everything coming back, everything kind of taken off again. The excitement was crazy during the summer. Everyone was just thinking about this Christmas and what events they could have. So all different range really. Corporate events being one of our biggest within corporate companies. This Christmas party season is the biggest event of the year to kind of reconnect people, team morale, just bringing everything back together again. And then we have the private social events as well, which are obviously vital to other people for their own personal enjoyment. But on the corporate front, we've had a rush of bookings. It's busier than it was in 2019, coming up to that Christmas. But it's been really good. But obviously now we have this challenge all over again to make this happen and safely.
How quickly or how soon do you feel that we might get back to normal again, whatever normal means, as people say these days? What do you think?
We had hoped this time last year, even with our weddings through the summer, we thought, oh, everything's going to be totally fine. 2021 is the year. I'm thinking more now it's next year. Obviously now this year, people have done more hot desking. People have kind of left office units. They're trying to think of alternative ways to working from home being the main one. But I'm thinking it would be probably next year would be one of the main celebration years where everything kicks off properly. But unfortunately, the last few weeks, with everything booked for this Christmas, we've now been hit with these challenges where we have to put several measures in place, which has never really been done because we haven't had the chance to have the events in the last 2 years.
You've been doing one or two fancy pants parties in your time, though, haven't you?
Yeah, the odd one, yeah. So here and there. Obviously, we have a lot of clients. Celebrities are not like the only clients that we do. But yeah, we've done some nice things for a few top celebrities.
I think we've got a bit of a clue about one of them. Let's have a quick. There you go. Fantastic. You can't reveal too much more than that, I know. But good for you. Hopefully things will get back to normal before too long. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.
What about wedding plans? What about people who are getting married at this time of year? What are they allowed to do and not do? Let's talk about that in more detail. And Sarah Hayward is with us. Hi, Sarah. It must be so challenging for people, UK Weddings Task Force and Luxury Wedding Planner as well, of course. Can they just, what rules do they have to abide by?
At the moment, there are no restrictions on weddings, but since we returned to work in July, and you'll probably recall, weddings were pretty much off the table for most of the pandemic. For a little while, we were able to do weddings of 15 people and then 30 people, but we really got back to work mid-July. We've been managing the backlog. So now, as well as the weddings that were planned, we're obviously busy doing the backlog of weddings over 18 months of cancellations and postponements. So people are being careful. We're not seeing postponements and cancellations at the moment. And of course, anyone who's booked a wedding for between now and Christmas, it's all planned and it's all paid for. But we're just seeing people take a more cautious approach.
Okay, so there's no sort of restrictions that we saw in the summer where people couldn't sing or dance
no, there's none
or whatever?
None of that at the moment. And we did meet with Minister Scully 2 or 3 weeks ago. We spoke to his department again last week, and we were told just keep watching the hospitalisations. If the NHS is overwhelmed, that's when we understand and we hear through the media that Plan B might be implemented. But having looked at what Plan B might look like, it isn't going to affect the majority of weddings. It's going to affect weddings, if they do bring Plan B in, on your guests of several hundred.
Yeah, and do you always have to have an eye, and indeed your couple have to have an eye on what potential restrictions might be being brought in somewhere down the pike?
Yeah, we do. I mean, the big one, as you said, was no dancing, no singing. And those restrictions were gradually lifted as we moved towards, I think it was called phase 4 at the time. But at the moment, the big thing that's being affected for couples is honeymoons. And of course, my sector overlaps with travel, tourism, and general hospitality, who are already challenged in other ways. Hospitality have got staffing shortages, and now we're seeing these travel restrictions come in. So certainly the couples we're working with, you've got weddings over the next 3 weeks to a month. It's honeymoons that they're really nervous about, with travel restrictions meaning they can't go to some places, and coming back in is going to cost them a lot more than they thought that it would with testing.
A lot of people get married this time of year.
There's traditionally around 13,000 weddings in December. We think that's about double, possibly slightly more than double, because of the backlog at the moment. So there are quite a few weddings, but it's traditionally our quiet season, but we're just catching up now with all those postponements. So we're pretty busy.
Oh, lovely. Okay, Sarah, it's good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for the clarification. Thank you.